Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Okay, so we've actually been off for a little while. Bit of a surprise here. We'll get into that in a minute, but it's good to be back, Steve, here with you. Back and ready to jump into some more science, technology, and culture topics.
It's great to be back and great to have you back with us, Ben.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to explain real briefly why that's the case. We've been off for over a month, and normally it's usually because of one of us has gone on a holiday or something, which is always nice and fun. Wish that was the case this time. Back in September, I actually had a left of field medical issue prepare itself, which was basically a cancer diagnosis. So I had to obviously take some time off to deal with that. I'm actually going to make a separate video on this for the channel, just to sort of explain exactly what the whole experience was and what it is. And the reason I'm doing that is not because I, have some existential angst to get off my chest or anything. But the thing that I found was that my particular one, there's literally no information that I found on it. So I think it might be a good idea for me to put this all down and have an easy snapshot of explaining what this is, just in case anyone out there gets it and they can use it as a resource. And as it was explained to me, this can actually happen to anyone, anytime. There's nothing about genetic factors, lifestyle factors, nothing like that. It was explained to me that it was akin to winning the lotto. And that anyone can get it regardless of how healthy you are or whatever. So, in summary, I noticed a lump on my left middle finger appear back in May. I thought it was like I'd knocked it and it'd swollen up or something, but then it wasn't going away. I then thought it might have been a cyst. But then, long story short, after it got tested, it turned out to be a sarcoma. And it was quite surprising to me. This opened up a whole new field of study, even though it was quite a bit to go through. But sarcomas are only a 2% diagnosis of all types of cancer that gets diagnosed out there. They're very rare, but where I was lucky and where it was akin to winning the lotto was that I actually got it on my middle finger. Getting it in the finger is even rare for a sarcoma diagnosis. Now, that ended up resulting in me having to have surgery to have my finger removed, and that's where I'm at now. So I've got that as a result. So obviously I've had to get some recovery time built in. I'm obviously still processing it and whatnot. I'm actually feeling quite positive because even though it's never good to get a cancer diagnosis, and I did lose my finger because of it, essentially the only real way to deal with it was to basically have it cut out, which is what was done. The pathology that was done on the finger came back all good. It was 100% well clear of all margins, so that effectively means that it didn't spread to a point where it would have spread into the rest of my hand, which then would have caused other issues, obviously. So in theory, I'm obviously going to be tested for the next 5 years, quarterly, to make sure that I haven't got anything else popping up anywhere else. But essentially, this should hopefully be the end of it, at least for this particular one, because they've effectively told me that they've excised it. So, yeah, it was quite a shock. Just had to take some time off to do that. And, I learned a lot about this particular type of cancer, which, other people tend to get it in their limbs, and that can be more problematic because it can return. Back in the good old days, if you want to call it, they actually amputated limbs for it because that was the only option. They do a lot of limb-saving surgery now to save that sort of thing, but it does require consistent checking in, and because as it was explained to me, the sarcomas are really aggressive, so they do it's really hard to get them out. So any opportunity that where, like in my case, removing the finger, removed it completely, that's the option that they tend to take. Although I haven't got full function in my hand yet, it's more because of the effects of the surgery. Obviously, it has a bit of an impact when you have like a deep cut like that. So just over the next few months or whatever, I'm sure it'll all get better and whatnot. So that kind of explains where we're at. Like I said, I'm putting together a video for that. I think that'll work out well. And I think that'll at least provide like a snapshot overview of this particular type of thing if anyone else experiences it. So
yeah, wow, that's quite a story, Ben. So, but great to have you, with us, and certainly you seem to be doing very well. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely. But now we're back and we're up and running. Obviously, we need to get back into some more science, technology, and culture. And there's been a bit going on while we've been away. We're going to focus on two tech topics here that I guess caught our interest. We have to talk about Elon Musk and his takeover of Twitter, and the seeming chaos that seems to be going on over there. And actually, maybe I just want to start with the fact that it's all been public. And maybe the most amusing things to me are where Elon's like workshopping ideas on Twitter. Like the funniest thing to me was when he announced he's going to charge $20 for the blue tick, and then Stephen King tells him to bugger off, and Elon replies, "Well, how about $8?" Like, what is this? It's just hilarious.
But it is hilarious, but it's really nice to see, I guess what's going on in the Twitter boardroom is visible, it's transparent, it's the thinking of what's happening at Twitter. There aren't very many companies. I can't think of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, or any, General Motors or Ford broadcasting what they're thinking and workshopping their ideas for future, business strategies out in the open. It's bizarre, but I think, as we keep on saying, over the last 10 years with social media, we've just seen the world get weirder and weirder and weirder.
I should say Elon actually fired the board. It's only him that's putting it out there.
He's opening up items on the agenda to the whole Twitterverse. It's crazy.
What about, I thought it was one could argue that Twitter was bloated and wasn't being run well beforehand anyway, but laying off half the workforce, but then going back and realizing that he shouldn't have laid off some of them and saying, "Oh, do you mind coming back?" That seems a little ill-advised, perhaps, just as a standard HR practice.
Isn't that very Elon, though? Like, kind of got it right 60 or 70%, but maybe 30% of the idea wasn't that good. And look, we're talking about people's livelihoods here, so it can't be pleasant to be laid off and then asked to come back. But conversely, I can't imagine any large organisation that lays people off realising or then admitting that they made a mistake and asking people back. Elon really breaks the mould, I guess a bit the way Trump did for politics, and he polarises. You either love him or hate him, or except for me, maybe I'm somewhere in the middle. But it's strange. It's new. We haven't seen this before, and it gets everyone talking, and that's what Twitter's all about.
Absolutely. I've heard commentary around Twitter's never been as entertaining as what it's been now. The other thing that I wanted to mention too was this idea of he's a billionaire, so he must be a genius. And I know that there's a line of thought out there about that. I think this maybe exposes a little bit of that out in the open, and maybe I don't know whether he's intentionally wanting to do that or not. It's a bit hard to tell with Elon whether he's as deliberate as what maybe it appears, or maybe it's not. It's probably somewhere murky in the middle, as you say. Like he does have some intentionality behind what he's doing, but then like he's probably not thinking through everything in terms of consequence. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, he had that employee meeting where he suggested that Twitter could go bankrupt if things aren't done properly, and just openly told everyone about it. Then he told them all that they all have to work in the office unless they're exceptional. And it might be that other companies might have done it in a more long-winded way as part of what you would call a change process, and obfuscated it over like the course of a year, but then ended up in the same place. And he's just done it in the course of 2 weeks. And that's why it comes across as brutal as it does.
Yeah, well, look, you only have to go back and look at the history of Tesla, where he's done these sorts of things before. And he does, you've got to say, quite openly. So, once again, these are, quite serious topics, especially for the people involved. But, Elon keeps going. And as to whether or not he's a genius, who knows? He certainly has his own way of thinking, and that way of thinking is the Elon approach, and it's obviously successful. He's obviously got good business thinking because he's made a success out of SpaceX, and he's made a success out of Tesla, and everyone said he wouldn't with those. So I'm sure he's going to make mistakes at Twitter, but there's only one way to find out if he's successful, and that's time.
The other thing too, just finally, is that it's a different business. One could potentially see some correlation between Tesla and SpaceX. I don't know if the leap's there to a social media platform, because I think an entirely different set of dynamics are at play there, largely because of a massive user base that's using it as well.
Well, are you counting bots? Elon doesn't. You know, once again, I think he has a vision for what he thinks Twitter should be. He's a Twitter user. He loves it. And I think he's taking that vision there. Does it make it better or worse? I guess it depends which side of the fence you sit on. And but I'm sure that it will have long-term effects on what Twitter looks like in 12 months and 3 years. And then the big question is how long will he hold on to Twitter for?
Absolutely. We'll watch that space very carefully. All right, just finally, we're going to move on to our final topic, which is what the hell was Apple doing with their iPad lineup this year? And I want to couch this in the concept of I was in an upgrade cycle, like I was looking to shake up my product lineup. And it was largely dependent on what the iPad release strategy was going to be. So I was going to go in with the idea of getting the next iteration of the iPad Pro, which was the M2 one. So they make the announcement, and not only is the M2 iPad Pro with maybe one minor feature no different, and obviously the chip change, to the previous one, the M1 iPad Pro, it's also not really that much different to the A12Z iPad Pro that came out in 2020 or the A12X in 2018. So effectively, it's not any different. And the icing on the cake, which put me completely off and changed my mind, was they raised the price by $200 on every iteration, and they're quoting currency exchange issues with that. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, nah, not doing it. Forget it. I'm done with it. So I then thought to myself, but I still need an iPad for like the note taking. Like I'm using it right now for my timer and notes for the show. And I thought, okay, I've used an iPad mini before and I really enjoyed that. So maybe I'll go for the iPad mini. So I pop onto Apple's website. They've jacked the price of that up by $120 compared to the night before of the announcement, again because of currency exchange, and I got even angrier. And so I popped onto Amazon, and it turned out Amazon was still selling with the old prices at a discount. So I got it off. I got an Apple device off of Amazon for the first time, and I got it with the Pencil as well, which was also discounted. So now I've got a 6th gen iPad Mini. Never expected that I would ever be getting one, and the irony out of all of this is that I've now understood that. For me, I think the iPad mini is actually the iPad I should have been using the entire time. And the reason for that is that the M1 laptops and M2 ones now have become so good that the iPad mini kind of, to me, essentially means that it's the best iPad to do iPad things. So I'm not trying to treat it as a laptop. I'm not trying to treat it as a productivity device. It's actually the best one to get, at least in my opinion, and that's my recommendation. But it's funny that their release cycle caused that. It caused me to change my entire thinking. And there's a whole wave of commentary on the internet now that's saying, basically, if you're in the market for an iPad, buy an old one. And we can go into a whole discussion around the new iPad 10th generation. Basically, the recommendation is buy an iPad Air 4 from the previous year because it's functionally better, has the same chip. They've got weirdo stuff going on in that iPad where you have to they made it compatible with the first gen Apple Pencil, which is Lightning, but it's got a USB-C connector, so you have to buy a dongle. But it's not only just that dongle, you have to plug it into a USB-C cable to get it to work. And even when it's plugged in, it doesn't actually work. Like, you can't actually have it plugged in and work on the iPad. So I was like, and then on top of that, like we said before we got on, they're still selling the 9th gen iPad, which has Lightning on it. At the more reasonable price. They jacked up the price of what was supposed to replace it with the 10th gen one. The iPad Air that's currently for sale makes no sense whatsoever. And then you've got these underwhelming iPad Pro releases, which it's better value for money to buy last year's version or the year before's version rather than the current one. So anyway, I got all of that out of my system. I'm convinced that...
What must the sales meeting have been like, Ben, when they made these decisions? They must have all been confused, because I've listened to what you've said, and it sounds like every model is half of another model.
Yeah, essentially. And you can go onto the used marketplace and buy something that's much better value for the same price or less. So I just don't get it. Like, if you just bring up the iPad page and you look at it and you go, what the hell am I supposed to buy out of this? Which, for me, that's why when I bought the iPad mini, that one makes the most sense, because it's really the only one in its class out of all of the lineup, because you're buying it for its size, effectively. So, yeah, it's just weird.
I liked it when there was only one iPad.
And one iPhone, to be honest.
They were good days.
So again, in one sense, I've found a place for an iPad now, and funny enough, I'm using it a lot more. So where I wasn't using my iPad Pro before. The next step is that I actually went out and got an M1 Pro MacBook Pro, the 14-inch, and there's a whole story behind that. It all started with that iPad discussion that I went through, realizing that they were going to progressively start jacking up the prices for everything because of currency exchange fluctuations. So I realized that if I hung around for an M2 Pro version of the 14-inch, when that got released, the equivalent one would probably be another $300 or $400 more expensive because of the currency stuff. So I thought, screw it, I'll just go onto the refurbished website, and I bought one. And ironically, they changed the discount on the refurbished products from 10% to 15%. So I ended up getting one that's effectively worth $4,000 at retail for under $3,000. So Australian dollars. So that was a significant saving. And while I wasn't looking...
That come with all ports?
Yep, it's got all the ports on it. And I have to say, and we can have this discussion separately for a longer time, I thought the M1 was fast. Like, in every edge case where I was running into walls with the M1, this just completely obliterates it. And then I kind of wonder, who's the M1 Max chip for, really? Unless you're running 6 monitors and are running, you're doing Pixar effects or something. I just don't know what you would need anything more for, because this thing runs so smoothly. And, there's other use cases like running Windows on ARM under Parallels virtualized, and I can run both of the systems simultaneously, no slowdown whatsoever. It's an incredible machine. But again, it just goes to show that, they screwed with their iPad lineup, and that caused me to change all of my purchasing decisions. So I would save a lot more money. And I just wonder how many other people are doing that, because I see a lot of commentary about it too, online.
Wow. Well, you've been very clear, but I'm totally confused about what Apple's doing. It's all these products that, I'm sure I could work my way through it. And I'm probably sure most people could actually work their way through it if they took their time. But it's confusing. It's not helpful, and Apple used to not be those things. And now it's wow. To hear your story just now, I'm glad I've got an M1. I'm very happy with it. Thank you. I'll stay there.
I should qualify by saying this is all first world problems. I'm glad I'm in the position where I can make decisions like this. But having said that, they are a extremely rich company. shall we say, if not the richest in the world. You'd expect a bit better in terms of figuring out a lineup that actually works. And they've been famous for their differentiating sales technique is that we provide simplicity in the experience, and they're going down the route of like, how do you pick between two different Windows laptops at this point?
I think it's safe to say that Steve Jobs would be quite unpleased at the moment.
Do you know what the sad thing is, just to like sort of tie it off, is that it probably is benefiting their bottom line because they're actually selling more. This to me reads like someone was looking at a sales graph. They could tell that if they did X, Y, and Z, that they'd punch out X amount of revenue, and they probably will, just by virtue of flooding the market with more options.
Look, I'm certain that's the case. There's no doubt the sales teams in these organisations really rule the roost. Used to be when Apple would joke about that being the case at Microsoft. I think now we're seeing that sales is king in both organisations.
Absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. It's good to be back, and I'm sure we'll rip into more topics to close out the year.
Look forward to it.
Absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels, RSS feeds, etc. Watch us on any and all of your devices, and we greatly appreciate you checking us out and visiting our website. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.